Hey there, I'm MrLeftTurn and welcome to another edition of Back of the Pack, a series in which I dissect the worst episodes from a season of a show. Well, now that Season 9 is in the books, I can safely say that I felt it was a really solid season of Friendship is Magic and a great send-off for our beloved little ponies. Heck, it's possibly one of the finest last seasons to a show ever, but that's certainly up for debate. However, despite how much I enjoyed the majority of the episodes, especially the villain arc, there was one episode in particular that left a sour taste in my mouth. With Season 9 being all about tying up loose ends before Twilight assumed Equestria's throne, I was thrilled to see we would be getting a finale episode to the Daring Do arc. One last adventure with her and Rainbow really sounded like a treat considering how great the other episodes with the Indiana Jones pwn went. However, what we got with this episode didn't end the adventurous arc with an exciting bang. Rather, we were left with a poorly written mess of a story that makes the Daring Do Saga of MLP limp across the finish line to its conclusion. Daring Done, while not the best episode of the group, still had that excitement of adventure and action that made it a fun ride with Rainbow and Pinky tagging along, which would have made for a perfectly enjoyable send-off for the character. Unfortunately, thanks to the last sequel of Daring Doubt, I really wish that would have been the case. Why though? What made this episode go the way of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Well, that's not going to be an easy question to answer, so how about we stop asking rhetorical questions and take a deep look, shall we? This is, sadly, Daring Doubt. The problems for this episode begin right as it starts, as the premise itself is incredibly flawed from the get-go. We open with Fluttershy stopping by to thank Rainbow Dash for letting her borrow her Daring Do books because Fluttershy has recently come enthralled by them, which is some nice fleshing out for Fluttershy. Plus, now Rainbow has another friend besides Twilight to gush about Daring Do's book series. However, concern arises when Fluttershy mentions that she's
This is actually my second time through. I read them all, from Daring Do and the Sapphire Statue to Daring Do and the Fallen Idol.
and Rainbow mentions how that's not an entry in the saga. The two deliberate about it when Fluttershy points out that maybe Rainbow Dash missed the book's debut since it only came out a week prior. Although Rainbow counters that by explaining she doesn't miss a Daring Do book release, why on earth would Fluttershy draw that conclusion? Remember this opening scene in Daring Don't? She was the first pony, at least in the episode from what we saw, that Rainbow Dash told the next book was only 4 months away from hitting the shelves. And as we see later on, Fluttershy even recalls events from that episode, so what sense does it make for her to draw the conclusion that Rainbow simply missed a new book coming out because it just came out a week prior? Also, if she did recently get into the Daring Do books, why did she not try discussing the new book with Dash until now? Wouldn't that be a huge topic of conversation, especially for a brand new fan of the series? Even if spoilers were a massive concern, like they were for Harry Potter when it was still new, she didn't once in that span of a week ask Rainbow, "Hey, did you get the new Daring Do book and what chapter are you on?" Now you can make the argument that one or both of them were probably too busy in that span of a week to have bumped into each other, what with Fluttershy's Animal Sanctuary and Rainbow's Wonderbolt duties, but since nothing of the sort is mentioned by either character, it still feels odd that it took an entire week before Fluttershy brought up the new book to Rainbow. Anyway, we then go on to find out, after Fluttershy allows Rainbow to borrow her copy until she can get her hooves on one of her own, that the summary paints Daring Do as a thieving fraud. Naturally, Rainbow is appalled and confused at why A.K. Yearling would write that about herself. Of course, it's obvious that she didn't, but Fluttershy then points out in a surprised tone that some pony by the name of Groom QQ Martingale is the culprit. Obvious reference aside, you're telling me that in the time Fluttershy has had the book and has read it, as she admits later on in this scene,
I figured it was an artistic choice.
that she never once noticed that A.K. Yearling's name was not on the cover nor any of the first few pages? She also didn't question the summary that completely slanders Daring Do, but didn't realize that the book was written by a completely different pony? Not to mention, she's not fazed at all when Rainbow reads a passage that says Daring Do is a real pony, so she's had to have read at least that far, but why is that not a concern for her? Rainbow is rightfully freaked out by that secret being revealed, yet Fluttershy doesn't seem to care. Heck, after Rainbow tosses the book away in frustration, saying they have to warn AK before too many ponies read it, Fluttershy casually strolls over to the book and sticks her nose back in it.
Fluttershy!
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I can guess what some of you might be thinking, that I'm being a little overly critical about something small like the opening scene, which is just under 2 minutes long. And I can understand that criticism, but I have a point. Do you notice a pattern in this opening scene? Fluttershy drawing a silly conclusion that Rainbow simply missed a new book's debut. Fluttershy taking an entire week to bring it up to Rainbow. Fluttershy doesn't question how this new book completely slanders Daring Do, a pony she knows is real and has seen first hoof that she's exactly like she depicts herself in her writing. Fluttershy shrugging it off as an artistic choice. Fluttershy not noticing a different author's name on the front cover, and Fluttershy seemingly not giving a crap that the book says Daring Do is real. I'm pointing all this out because, as everyone should know, the opening scene to a story sets the tone and type of characters that we're supposed to become invested in. Yet, in the opening scene for Daring Doubt alone, Fluttershy is depicted as completely naive and oblivious instead of the kind and generally trusting mare we've come to love. And unfortunately, what we're shown of her character only gets worse as the episode goes on. So worse, in fact, that I dare say she becomes flanderized by the episode, being unable to tell the difference between being skeptical and open-minded to someone else's side of a story, and just being completely gullible and naive. In fact, this is my biggest issue with Daring Doubt. There are other issues which I'll get to later, but the way Fluttershy is written just does not stick well with me, both from a character and story consistency standpoint, and because the whole lesson of the episode is hinged on the way she's written. Fluttershy's portrayal here makes Rainbow Dash the more rational character, and I can't believe I had to say that, but it's true. When Dash rightfully says they have to warn AK, you know, the sane thing to do when something as slanderous as this comes out against your friend, Fluttershy points out that Rainbow should probably read Martingale's book first to get his side of the story. Okay, I understand that the episode is going to try to teach an important lesson about getting both sides to a story before drawing your own conclusion. I can agree that this is a fantastic lesson to learn, but I just cannot get behind this setup. Fluttershy knows that Daring Do is real and helped her defeat Awizodel in Daring Don't. Not to mention, she fully understands what kind of pony Cabaleron is from both the books and seeing how he and his goons trashed Daring's house. So why, after reading one book, does she immediately become skeptical of what Daring Do's books have to say?
Did you know he's actually a history professor and amateur bird watcher? You have to admit, Daring Do wrecks a lot of spider webs in her adventures.
Seriously? That's the reasoning the episode gives for why Fluttershy becomes skeptical of the whole Daring Do series. It's nice that the episode can portray skepticism, but it's aiming it at the wrong side. I'm not saying you should blindly believe your friends for whatever they say, write, or do. It's good to hold a small degree of skepticism so you, again, don't become blind to what they do, but Fluttershy is way too quick to doubt Daring Do's adventures and consider that this new writer could have legitimate points. If you want to portray someone's trust in a friend being called into question, we need to see it being whittled down, not start out the story with Fluttershy being this ignorant by ignoring Rainbow's counters and giving so much leeway to Martingale, or at the very least, have better reasons than Cabaleron having outside interests, or the fact that Daring Do wrecks spiderwebs. This isn't being open-minded and willing to hear out another side, this is being gullible and easily swayed. Look, I understand too that Rainbow Dash called Fluttershy out for wanting to get Martingale's side of the story after his book revealed that Daring Do is real, and she also gets on her case about bringing up the spider cruelty, so the episode is acknowledging that Fluttershy is acting fairly ridiculous like I am, right? Well, no, not really. Sure, Rainbow is pointing all this out to her, but the problem is all these warnings just go in one ear and come out the other for Fluttershy, i.e. they have no impact on her way of thinking or decision making for the episode, thus they don't change the outcome. So Rainbow might as well have not said anything at all because even if you remove her dialogue when she scolds Fluttershy, nothing changes. Just because the episode says Fluttershy is saying incredibly ludicrous things and making poor arguments holds no weight if it doesn't do anything with it. Nope, she just ignores Rainbow and still gives more leeway to this new book than to AK Yearling. Sadly, Fluttershy's gullibility is only magnified when she and Rainbow Dash confront Martingale at a book signing after going to warn AK at a book signing of her own she just so happened to be holding that day directly across the street. What luck, right?
That's not Martingale! It's Dr. Cabaleron in disguise!
Okay, I admit I do find this so stupid that it becomes hilarious. She can tell from that well-done disguise that he's Cabaleron, yet she couldn't tell he was the pony framing Daring Do from under that cloak in Somnambula. I can't help but laugh at that. However, that's all I like about this reveal. This scene is, without question, the worst in the entire episode for a number of reasons. The writers have Fluttershy so enthralled by Cabaleron's writing that she just apparently ignores Rainbow Dash. And her excuse? Because, technically, he's doing what AK Yearling does by making a fake author self to make himself look like a hero.
I'm sorry, what the f***?
What utter nonsense! This will come up again in a minute, but Fluttershy? Remember Daring Don't? You helped Daring Do defeat Awizodal and foiled his plan to plunge that region into 8 centuries of unrelenting heat. You know that Daring Do is a legitimate hero. Not to mention, Rainbow calls Cabaleron out for trying out the same scheme he did in Somnambula right in front of Fluttershy. So if Rainbow and Pinkie told their friends about that particular adventure where Daring saved Rainbow, and why wouldn't they, what sense does it make for Fluttershy to try and compare Cabaleron's plan to what AK Yearling does? Then there was that nasty business where Cabaleron kidnapped both Rainbow and Quibblepants in Season 6. Couple those in with what Fluttershy saw and heard Cabaleron do in Daring Don't, her total non-reaction to learning that he's behind the book is ridiculous. Why not have her struggle with that fact while admitting she still finds his writing style interesting? Nope, even with Rainbow's warning, Fluttershy not only asks Cabaleron to autograph her book, she even goes so far as to be a giddy fangirl that tells him,
Fluttershy with 2 T's.
Alright, notice how I keep bringing up Daring Don't? Well, for the record, Daring Doubt does remember the events of that particular story, but not in a good way. The most egregious problem with this scene and the entire episode for me is how this episode thinks it's okay to pick and choose which events to acknowledge and follow, and which ones to ignore for this story to work. Forgetting a detail that came before is one thing, annoying and kind of lazy, but one thing and something that shouldn't be surprising in a long-running series. However, actively acknowledging a key aspect of an episode from before and ignoring other aspects is just kind of deceitful and dishonest writing. What do I mean by this? Well, after Rainbow leaves the bookstore, thankfully blowing off Cabaleron after he uses flower colors as evidence that all of Daring Do's books could be full of inaccuracies and lies, he uses a sob story to try and get Fluttershy to believe him. Now this isn't too much of a problem since Fluttershy is generally trusting to others, and she always wants to comfort and listen to those around her. You know, being kind. No, the writers use this opportunity to at last have Fluttershy portray a little bit of skepticism towards Cabaleron, but with a fatal flaw.
But didn't you try to sell them to the highest bidder?
Only because I had to, since Daring Do kept taking our artifacts, but the museum closed. We were desperate for money to keep it open.
I cannot believe the writers did this. Yes, it's good that Fluttershy questions Cabaleron for once, but if she recalls that he only stole the ring to sell to the highest bidder, why does she not also call him out for lying his ass off when he said he and his goons were trying to sell the giant golden ring to keep his museum afloat? Let's take a look at the actual scene from Daring Don't, shall we?
Close, but no. I'm going to sell this to him, make a bundle, and retire from archaeology in splendor.
All 6 of the girls saw and heard what Cabaleron and his goons did to Daring Do's house, and what they were going to do with the ring. How can Fluttershy remember the very specific detail of him selling to the highest bidder, but not remember the rest of the same sentence where he wants to use the bits to retire in splendor? I'm sorry, but I don't buy any of this, and I don't believe that her memory is that specifically spotty because that's way too contrived. It's obvious that the reason she didn't remember the part about him retiring is because if she did, then she would have realized he's full of crap and then ceased to believe him, thus the episode wouldn't work. This is drawing from the lazy contrivance of why Rainbow didn't try to escape the room in Roller Coaster of Friendship, and it's a contrivance that really annoys me. The omitting of this line only serves to add to Fluttershy's gullibility and so the plot can keep moving forward. Had she actually remembered why Cabaleron was stealing that ring in the first place after he lied about his museum, then there's no way she would have actually agreed to go on an adventure with him and his goons.
Oh, for God's sake.
And here is the moment that gullible Fluttershy moves right into the territory of stupid Fluttershy. Seriously? You're agreeing to go on an adventure to search for an artifact in a remote jungle region of Equestria with ponies you know have committed breaking and entering, theft, and kidnapping. Even if you want to believe Cabaleron and give him leeway to understand him better, this isn't being open-minded and listening to both sides of a story. This is downright dangerous and stupid. Look guys, I apologize about this long-winded rant about Fluttershy's portrayal in this episode, but it's the worst part of the episode for a simple reason. Remember this Fluttershy?
You see Discord's behind all this, right?
Oh, of course I do. Do you all think I'm a silly, gullible fool?
This episode and this Fluttershy perfectly understood the concept of giving someone a chance to show they can better themselves, but it also knew that in order to do that, you have to be tough and hold some skepticism on your shoulder, or else you will be taken advantage of. Fluttershy gave Discord leeway so he himself could see the benefit of friendship and didn't force him to do anything. Yet at the same time, she knew what trouble he could cause, so she kept a close eye on him to keep him in check. And when he overstepped his bounds of freezing AJ's farm and rubbing it in her face that she couldn't use her element against him, Fluttershy absolutely let him have it. Where is the nuance and layering that Keep Calm and Flutteron's Fluttershy had? Daring Doubt's Fluttershy loses all of that and just rolls right over while believing practically every word Cabaleron has to say. Then you add on that she willingly goes with Cabaleron's group after knowing what he's committed before without question, and she loses everything that makes her Fluttershy, turning her into a one-dimensional nice pony. Had she actually realized Cabaleron was lying about keeping his museum open and started calling everything else into question, I would respect this portrayal of Fluttershy so much more. Unfortunately, we don't get that. Honestly, it would have been far better had she and Rainbow gone to confront Cabaleron together about the book, and then he uses better examples other than flower colors to try and convince Fluttershy once he realizes Rainbow wasn't going to budge. Something along the lines of, think of how many historic temples and ancient sites have to be destroyed because of her actions, calling back to his plan of sabotaging Daring Do and Somnambula. And yes, despite the fact that Daring Do and I both try to take relics from these places in a race, think of how many times her actions could have harmed us, or even worse. Besides, you know she collects those treasures for safekeeping in her own house. How am I any different? If I want to sell a relic I discover first to the highest bidder, that relic will be protected by that same bidder who wants to keep their investment safe. This would call the morality of what Daring Do and Cabaleron do into question much better. And while Fluttershy is clearly conflicted, saying she still thinks being in it for the money and other crimes like breaking and entering and kidnapping instead of doing it to protect and preserve these artifacts for future generations is just sleazy, Cabaleron can then say something like, "Fine, if you do not believe us, then maybe we should take a trip," and kidnap her to help himself and his goons steal the truth-telling talisman. This way, Fluttershy isn't some gullible buffoon, she still questions the legitimacy of Cabaleron, yet admits he may have somewhat of a point. Then when she's stuck on the trip with Cabaleron's group, she can learn just how he treats his goons so her kindness can rub off on them, and can also learn from them that Cabaleron wasn't always this bad, but the rivalry with Daring Do drove him to this level. Plus, Cabaleron can admit he exaggerated some things in the book, obviously, but can prove that AK Yearling got some things wrong as well, thus keeping the lesson of finding out the truth for yourself intact. As for the rest of the episode, well, it's certainly better, but not by much. Each time when it was just Daring Do and Rainbow on screen together, that same feeling of adventure and action was present. I especially loved the scene in the smaller bookstore when the two were discussing where Cabaleron could have taken Fluttershy. Just the duo talking about going somewhere as AK transformed into Daring Do was legitimately exciting. Plus, I just adored the little filly's mind being blown when she witnessed the transformation. It was adorable and reminded me a lot of myself when I was a kid and I got to meet Jeff Gordon. And I also enjoyed it when the two were captured by Awizodal and Daring had to use a sharp rock to free herself so she could in turn free Rainbow. They were just glimpses, but given how horribly written the scenes with Fluttershy were, they were breaths of fresh air for the episode. Heck, even when Daring and Rainbow met up with Fluttershy and Cabaleron against the Guardian Goyles and Awizodal, it was fun and again, felt like old times. Unfortunately, even in the temple when the groups were going after the talisman, there are issues. For instance, when it's revealed to Fluttershy that she was being used by Caballeron and his goons, I'm glad that she didn't try to find an excuse for them. She's actually hurt by this revelation, as seen by her face, yet when Caballeron admits, because of the talisman on his neck, that they did use her but have come to value her kindness, she's instantly forgiving. This wouldn't be too much of an issue if she didn't almost drown in lava. Did she just forget how close to death she was? Yet because the bad guys admit they're thankful for her kindness, everything is just okay. Not even a scolding from Fluttershy about how much danger they willingly put her in because she was the only one who could get the talisman. Really? Sure, Awizodel crashed the party quickly after, but come on. She is way too forgiving. A simple line of her saying, "You may value my kindness now, but you still took advantage of me. That's not nice," would have been great. It would have shown that while she forgives them, she's not letting them off the hook and that they still have a long way to go to become nicer ponies. But nope, everything is just hunky-dory between her and Caballeron. Remember, even though they've come to be grateful of the kindness she showed them, Caballeron was still playing Fluttershy for a chump right before she attempted to grab the talisman.
I can get it.
Oh, Fluttershy, you are too kind. But I could never ask that of you. It might be dangerous.
And for Awizodel, yeah, that's another issue I have with the episode. The big twist that he's not a monster that hoards treasures, but a protector just feels like a huge retcon to his character. Why do I say this? Well, all of a sudden the writers try to twist that he's now a protector of artifacts when that's never been hinted at before. Not to mention, it contradicts his plot in Daring Don't to collect the rings and guarantee his control over the Fortress of Talicon for 8 centuries. That's not a noble effort to protect artifacts, that's a completely selfish and villainous act. Plus, in the 2 times we've seen Awizodel before and he had Daring Do and Rainbow held captive, why did he never hint that he was a protector of the artifacts? It would have actually been helpful to him since Daring was a common thorn in his side and he wanted her to stop taking them. We didn't even get a simple line of, "I can't protect these artifacts if you keep trying to take them," while he has her captive. Or was he never intended to be a protector and this was shoved in last minute so the episode can claim, "There, they did their own research and discovered Awizodel wasn't just a simple monster that hoards treasures, the lesson works." I mean, it's crazy, but the lesson still could have worked if he was revealed to still be a monster who wanted treasures all to himself because they still would have done the research and found out their original idea of Awizodel was correct. Aside from the adventure scenes, there are still a few things I found that I liked in the episode. The jokes with the talisman were great, especially Caballeron cursing it because he could no longer BS his way out of situations. Rainbow and the one chubby goon admitting secrets was funny, though I think it would have been way more hilarious if Rainbow screamed about how Applejack lives like this every day while she had the talisman. And the little filly asking AK Yearling, just to be sure, if Daring Do really kicks puppies is just freaking hilarious, especially when the exchange is taken out of context. Sadly, that's it. Those, as well as the adventuring depicted in the episode, are the only aspects of it that I enjoyed. Daring Doubt is just a mess that was doomed from the start. It tries to teach a very important lesson about doing research for yourself to discover the truth and to always listen to both sides of a story before coming to a conclusion, but the episode absolutely wastes and butchers that lesson. Fluttershy is irritatingly stripped of all her layering until she's nothing more than a gullible fool that is too quick to dismiss AK Yearling's side to her stories, and she can't even tell she's being used, unlike in Keep Calm and Flutter On where she was very aware when Discord began to use her, and then she knew when to put her hoof down. Yet when Fluttershy does find out she was being used, she dismisses it all because Caballeron and his goons now appreciate her kindness. In addition, it was infuriating that the writers cherry-picked which parts of Daring Don't Fluttershy recalled so they can claim she was skeptical of Caballeron, yet if she remembered the rest of his sentence from the episode, she would have known he was lying and then Daring Doubt would have begun unraveling. And do I even need to mention how contrived it was for Fluttershy to not mention a new book had come out to Rainbow until a week after, that AK and Caballeron had book signings across the street from each other on the same day so Rainbow could easily find her and then warn her of Caballeron, and that Caballeron just so happened to have stolen a diamond that was perfect for the situation when the group was faced with the Guardian Goyles. In a season that was for the most part fantastic, this episode was especially frustrating to sit through. Of all 26 episodes from Season 9, Daring Doubt is the sole unlucky recipient of a red flag rating and a massively disappointing ending to the Daring Do Saga. However, what did you think of the episode? Did you find more enjoyment from it than I did? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching. I'm MrLeftTurn. I'll see you when I get back from the track.